The next lesson is on bounce rates. So first we're going to cover what's a bounce because there's a lot of different kinds. But generally speaking, it means that your email did not make it. It failed to send at all, or it got turned away at the door. There's lots of reasons that that might happen. And there's lots of different types of bounces. So the first bounce type that I'm going to cover for you is sort of the category of permanent fails. Pretty much any bounce that you name is going to always be counted as a permanent fail. Permanent doesn't necessarily mean that you can't send to them ever again. It just means that that send request did not get through for some reason. The message didn't get delivered. It's a permanent fail for that message. There's such a thing as a soft bounce, which happens sometimes before it turns into a permanent fail. A soft bounce would be like, the message failed to deliver, but we're going to try again. It didn't fail like permanently. It just didn't go through that time, and we think we might have a shot at it, so we're going to try to send it again in a few minutes. And then if that doesn't go through, we'll wait a few extra minutes, we'll try to send it again, and they'll keep going for maybe up to 8 hours. So it's going to soft bounce, and it might soft bounce several times. Soft bounce, soft bounce, soft bounce, soft bounce. And then the last log you see is going to say permanent fail because it's like, man, we tried for 8 hours and we couldn't get through. So we're just going to call it. And then there's what's called suppressions. And suppressions are when you request to send an email to Sally Smith, let's say, and Sally, you had already sent to her prior, and maybe her email address was no good, so it hard bounced, bad address. Well, if you try to send to her again, then the SMTP is going to say, no, I'm not going to send that because it's a known hard bounced address. It's a bad address, right? Or a bad account. Or it could be that Sally complained in the past, or she unsubscribed if they are aware of the unsubscribe. If they know that Sally Smith complained or unsubscribed, well, then they're going to suppress your message request. They're not going to send it, which is a good thing. This is all helping you. It keeps you from doing those things over again and increasing your numbers where you don't want them to go higher. And then there's what's called a hard bounce. And this is when the email did not send because it was a bad email address or it was a bad email account. All of these are still permanent fails. So permanent fail is kind of like the category, right? It could mean anything. And then there's different types of bounces that are all going to end up being, the soft bounce is going to end up being a permanent fail if it happens too many times. It could also soft bounce, deliver. It could do that. But all of these are basically types of bounces, and permanent fail is kind of like the main category. Hard bounces is what we're going to focus on, though. Hard bounces are the ones that hurt us. Hard bounces are the ones that cause us problems with reputation. If something soft fails or it gets suppressed, it's not hurting your reputation. I mean, it's a bummer we couldn't get through to Sally, but it's not hurting anything. But when your emails are bouncing because you're sending to bad addresses or bad accounts, that does hurt your reputation. Not only are those emails not getting delivered, but it looks like you're a spammer. It looks like you're sending emails to people who didn't request it, who did not give you their email address. They did not give you permission, basically, to send them an email. And it can lead to your domain getting blacklisted. I have a whole lesson on that we'll come to later, too. It can lead to your domain getting blacklisted. This is bad. And it can also lead to the domain or the account getting disabled. So if you have a domain that you're using or a subdomain you're using and you're sending to a bunch of addresses and you're getting a high bounce rate, well, then eventually that domain inside of your SMTP is just going to get canceled. Like, nope, we're not going to send from that one anymore. It's been bad. It's going to have to go on a timeout, maybe permanently. Same thing with the account. If you have too high of a bounce rate and the SMTP provider doesn't like how high that is, they may just skip right over disabling the domain and be like, your account is shut down. Final decision. By the way, those are not final. Just if anyone ever has their Mailgun account shut down, just let me know and I'll help you work through the process of a final decision being reversed, okay? So what's a good hard bounce rate? Most email sending providers or SMTPs have limits. Remember we talked about the players and the rules and how score is kept? So there's rules about sending to bad addresses. And one of the ways they keep score is by watching how high your hard bounce rate is. And if it gets too high, according to them, then that's where you're going to run into a problem with getting something shut down. If it gets too high, even if it's not too high for them, it can still cause a reputation problem. But we definitely want to make sure we don't have our account get shut down or our domain get disabled. So they have limits. And if you exceed those limits, they could disable your domain or your account. Mailgun's limit for hard bounces is 5%. That is ridiculous, by the way. That's like freaking high. Okay, we do not want a 5% bounce rate. If you hear me talking about bounces, I'm going to tell you we want to keep those well under 1%. Like the average person should be able to keep those well under 1%. For our clients, we want them well under 0.25%, because it's actually very easy to control by just simply making sure your list is clean. And I have a whole lesson on that. We'll talk about it too. So 5% is their max. Just don't go there. There's no reason for it. Best practice, less than 2% for most people. A lot of the tools that you're using are going to let you go to 2.5%. They're not going to worry about it at all. And then our clients, like I said, under 0.25%. Now, let's just say it's happening, because it does. There are times, right? And I mean, there's a gentleman that I've worked with who got a list of the employees from a police department, from the IT person. This was the list of all the employees that they were supposed to send these emails to. It was legit, not like scraped or bought or anything like that. And the IT guy gave him all the addresses, and instead of first name dot last name, it was supposed to be last name dot first name on all of them. Every freaking one of those bounced. Trust but verify. I don't care where you got lists from. I don't care how careful you are about making sure people opt in. It is important to trust but verify. If you're bringing on a client and they're like, no, this is my list, all these people came through ads, awesome, let's clean it. Just in case. Sometimes the older ones are still going to bounce because those addresses aren't any good anymore. So yeah, they definitely came through an ad, but it was last year. Sending to old contacts, that's what I was referring to. Poor list hygiene, definitely going to be a problem if you aren't cleaning your list routinely, or you're not cleaning it on the way in at least, right? You got to do that. Got a whole lesson on how to clean your list. How to keep your bounce rate low. Only send to warm or opted in contacts, people that gave you their email address. Limit sending to addresses that are older than a year that you haven't been engaging with. There's a little known thing that's going on out there with addresses that are older than a year. If the account hasn't been used, it's been inactive for 1 year or more, then the receiving email providers are often turning those email addresses into what's called a spam trap. Trap is the operative word here. So then you take your old list of people that you should have been emailing and you haven't been doing it, and now you go to start finally talking to these people, and some of those addresses are no longer valid, and some of them are turned into spam traps because they haven't been email accounts that have been used for a year or more. And when you send to addresses that are spam traps, that is bad. That's going to cause your reputation to go down, even if they legit opted in. Consider using a double opt-in. When people sign up for my software, I have them put in their information on the regular contact form, and then their account doesn't actually get activated until they go into the email and they catch the one that I sent them, that the system sent them, and it says, click on this link to sign in and activate your account. Because I need them to not misspell their address. I need them to put in a real address. I mean, and presumably they would because they're paying for it, but sometimes things happen. And so sometimes we get a help desk ticket and somebody's like, hey, I can't get into my account. And we're like, did you click the link in the email that you got when you signed up? Oh no, I didn't know that you sent me an email. Awesome, let's go do that so that it'll activate your account. That's a double opt-in. You can double opt-in on ads if you want to. I don't do double opt-ins unless there's money involved or like a login involved. If it's like, hey, I just want your lead magnet, I don't worry about it. So yes, people can put in fake addresses or they can misspell their address or something like that. And that does happen, but it hasn't been a problem. So I'm not going to go through like making them hit another link to do it. But it is something that you could consider. And then run your list through email validation. Email validation tools are everywhere. Bulk email checker is the one that we use. Zero bounce, unbounce, there's any numbers of them. I'll walk you through how to actually use bulk email checker and what the information is that it spits out and how we then use it and import it into your account. Okay?